Buenos días a todas y todos los delegados.
Good morning, everybody. And a very warm welcome to this sixth meeting of the plenary of the 113th session of the International Labour Conference.
Reanudaremos la discusión.
This morning we'll be continuing our discussion on the report of the Director General and the we'll be looking at the first report from the Credentials Committee and also hearing the results of the vote on the amendments to the Code of the Maritime Convention and the draft resolution of the conference on the situation of Palestine in the ILO and the rights of participation of Palestine in the work of the ILO. Before we start our work, I would like to wish a very good Eid to the Muslims amongst us. Delegates, we will start this meeting and the general discussion in accordance with the list of speakers on the screen.
Todavía no figura. Ahora sí. Ahora sí. Tiene la palabra el señor
Salvador Medina Torres, workers' representative from Mexico, has the floor.
Gracias, buenos días.
Thank you. Before I start, allow me to congratulate the Director General on his very substantial report, where he points out the various knots and nexuses of the problems that we're facing at national, continental and world level, and picks out the key issues that we have to address to overcome these problems, emphasizing political orientations, the adoption of which and implementation of which we have to be able to do and to put into practice so that we can move beyond the status quo to social productive innovation with investment that will be favorable to decent employment and proper remuneration. The report reminds us that for millions of people, work is in fact daily life itself, because it's the only way that they can live and make progress in their lives. And this is because the tendencies that we see in markets, production and labour relations to lead to greater precarity in labour relationships are a product of the incapacity which countries have to overcome the imbalance between capital and labour and resolve the political problem of humanity itself, which is to achieve sustainable development with prosperity for all. This complicated reality is also affected by various factors at a national and international level of politics, where multilateralism itself has been suffering with grave harm for global governance. In many countries, we're seeing an increase in the distance between political power and citizens, both in those where we have a formally established democracy and also in those which oscillate between a lack of democracy and the illiberal forms of it. There's discontent, polarization and radicalism taking root in our societies, and the achievement of Agenda 2030 could end up being an inachievable dream for large groups of the population and for various different generations. What we can see in the future is not very promising. And if new technologies and artificial intelligence, if they were free of domination and manipulation, it could give us hope for a situation in which no one is left behind. At the moment, there's no indication that this is going to be happening in the short or medium term, except with a few exceptions. Integrated democracy as a concept applicable to global and national governance is something that can't be provided in many cases by the current path that policy is going down. It's not just a question of making the world of work more democratic, it's a question of all of the subsystems that are connected, such as taxation, health, security, education, production and distribution of wealth, the access to goods and services, and particularly trade. Because national and international trade is a very important factor for socio-economic development, given the way that it depends the way that it develops has a direct effect on employment and an indirect effect for millions and thousands of millions of people. But trade and democracy could end up only being enemies if trade relationships only based on politics and in geopolitics. We but don't take into account intergovernmental cooperation. We're going through an unusual situation now, almost an absurd situation with a tariff war, which is based on egocentric motives, based on money and power, which, for no reason at all, endangers millions of jobs and the sustenance of millions of families in the world in a form that is incompatible with democratic values and the framework of rights and laws that give societies so cohesion. In this case, it's clear that we have a lamentable failure of multilateralism, as we also see in the armed conflicts that are having serious effects on humanity and grave consequences for the life of people in the planet. Given that, it's paradoxical that all nations want peace, but no one can stop the war and the huge amount of crime associated with it. For this reason, the greatest concern of the union movement comes from the lack of effective tripartite dialogue and effective democracy in the different areas of our life in society and in the world of work. There's no doubt the democratic deficits call into question and endanger the present and future of work and of people. It's not in vain that the Director General's report refers to the dangers of concentration of power and riches, which are seen increasing in many cases, and markets where the dominant powers determine the rules, access, prices, distribution, and respect, and to a large extent, the histories of inequalities. The union movement everywhere has been pointing out the need for a new social contract to preserve and deepen democracy and to guarantee decent work and social protection, something which was dealt with in last year's conference. It's a social contract which will give priority to the institutions of democratic governance, reduce inequality, and this will be centred on the needs and aspirations of people in the centre of policy, providing for participation of the social partners, enlarging the space of civic cooperation and filling in gaps between cultures and society production and in the environment. So we need actions which are effective and will transform the situation, which can only be done with policies of structural change, which address the causes of all social, political, economic and environmental exclusion. If we don't have that, then the best declarations will end up falling short of their intentions because of a lack of political will to implement them in a democratic way. We can't continue to carry on going down the old way, which doesn't change people's lives. We'd like to recall that CTM for many years have been calling on the need to invest in and revitalise tripartism in ILO's programme and in its constituents' countries. This is essential to strengthen the bases of democracy and to reinforce them, the bases that sustain it, and to revamp balanced participation of the social partners in national democracy. This is because the future of work is also the future of democracy and of social justice. Thank you, Minister Medina from Mexico. Now we're going to hear pre-recorded video from Mr. Dabu Diandine, who is technical adjutant and an alternate member of for the employers of Iran.
Thank you, Mr. President. I'm very grateful for the opportunity to be a part of this discussion, given the importance of the topics we are addressing. I would like to thank the Director General and his administration for bringing the big challenge before the international arenas. The valuable human family approach can provide a way out of the many crises, including job squeeze, unemployment, insecurity, cuts in spending on social services, and reducing investment in people. Ladies and gentlemen, as an internationally recognized principle, jobs are top priority, and the outlook for growth remain a major concern. a key challenge, not only facing my country, but also the world over, is young generation and the question of their jobs, of their rights, and of their future. Today, young generation are demanding that their voices to be heard and their role be recognized not only as just the target group for which decent job must be found, but also as today's development partners. Ladies and gentlemen, to this end, there are different duty barriers in countries haunted by unemployment, lack of decent jobs, and slowing growth. It is mainly the responsibility of governments. In addition to that, non-state actors can also be considered duty barriers. In this context, public and private investment partnership is the main measure of creating demand for labor, which not only guarantee of job creation, but also a modifier of the employment structure. In order to improve the country's dismal investment climate and economic prosperity, among the priorities of the structural policy are first, to stimulate growth of healthy competition by eliminating administrative barriers and increasing innovation activities, and second, to modernize the system of education, vocational training, and professional retraining. Mr. President, dear delegates, artificial intelligence, AI, is expected to fundamentally transform the global workforce by 2015, according to reports from the World Economic Forum. Estimates suggest that up to 60% of current jobs will require significant adaptation due to AI. AI is advancing at breakneck speed. The big question is how long it will take until technology dominates the labor market. So we all should start rethinking about our own generation's career. In this context, ladies and gentlemen, we believe the ILO needs to concentrate further on activities that respond to members' needs and expectations, and to highlight future priorities for technical assistance and cooperation. This gathering could create a suitable ground for this approach. Here, I would like to continue my remarks by recalling the point made by our employers delegate, Mr. Otaradian, at the last year's ILC as to considering the 1st of June each year as the International Employers' Day. I would like to once again recall this request as for considering naming the 1st of June as the International Employers' Day that could provide greater unity and integration of the employers of the world. Mr. President, distinguished delegates, I conclude my remarks by stressing that in every crisis there are many opportunities. My main message is that the developed and the developing world should work together through the present crisis, bringing a balance to the global trade and labor markets. Ladies and gentlemen, I thank you all for your kind attention.
Agradecemos el aporte entonces.
Thank you. We're now going to give the floor to Mr. Ihar Starovoital, Government Representative of Belarus.
Уважаемый господин председатель.
Mr. President, ladies and gentlemen, allow me, on behalf of the government of Belarus, to greet the members present at the 113th session of the International Labour Conference, and also to congratulate the President on his election. Wish you, Mr. President, and all members a successful conference. We're talking about the challenges in the current world of work. We are looking for strategic priorities which need to be the obvious steps to achieve decent work, and therefore I should like to say that the Director General, Mr. Hongbo, has been very concrete in working with regard to the issues of decent work, new jobs, and the problems for achieving social justice at the current stage of development. Many workers are concerned with regard to changes in the labour market and therefore the uncertainties about their future. Economic progress isn't necessarily a guarantee of prosperity for all, and we need to give greater attention to this. Mr. President, the issue of social justice needs to be key not only for the International Labour Organization but also for every national government. Social justice means that the state is carrying out its duties to the citizens. In Belarus, we work closely with the ILO. We support the aims of the ILO, and we are achieving the goals to which we are all meant to be aiming. These tasks have always been close to the heart of Belarus. Our aim is to ensure that we have a stable, socially oriented state of welfare for all who live in Belarus, on the basis of our conviction that the human measure must be taken into account in economic and social policy, and social dialogue should be the most important aspect for social and economic development. Mr. President, Belarus has always been in favor of peace and cooperation. We call upon all states to leave behind the ideologies of standing against one another, because we can only overcome the modern challenges and achieve our aims when we work together. We want the world to be unified, but unfortunately, today the reality is different. We see that there is unprecedented status of states working only for themselves or trying to control others through political or economic pressures. Economic sanctions have also led to terrible consequences in many countries of the world, particularly the loss of jobs and the removal of the social guarantees. And we cannot allow the ILO to not get involved in this. We therefore need to call upon states who are acting this way towards others to stop urgently. We need to ensure that we take the decisions which the workers and peoples of the world are waiting for from this organization. And the collective West, with a number of workers, are working against Belarus, and in 2023 at the 111th session of the ILO, resolutions were taken against the Republic of Belarus, which led to the isolation of Belarus. We feel that that resolution was unfair and politically motivated because it is fundamentally opposed to the principles of the organization. There will be a special session on the situation in Belarus, and we call upon delegates of the conference who will be taking part in that meeting to support Belarus and to oppose the ongoing politicization of the ILO and its bodies. Thank you.
Agradecemos al delegado del gobierno de Belarus.
Thank you to the government delegate from Belarus. We now call Ms. Hind bin Suleiman, employer delegate from the United Arab Emirates, to speak.
سعادة رئيس المؤتمر، سعادة رئيس مجلس إدارة منظمة العمل الدولية، سعادة
Thank you, Mr. President, Director General, ladies and gentlemen, ambassadors, ladies and gentlemen, heads of delegation. It is an honor for me to speak on behalf of the Chamber of Commerce and Industry of the United Arab Emirates. As the employer's representative, I have the honor, therefore, of giving you my great congratulations, because we believe that the organization is doing a lot and should be congratulated for its efforts on tripartism. They support us and accompany us in. As the Chamber of Commerce and Industry, we represent the private sector in the Emirates. And this plays an extremely important role with regard to the respect of international and national standards with regard to employment. We are very much attached to social dialogue among the social partners, and also we are attached to social justice. We try step by step to achieve a situation which will lead to decent jobs for all workers. We look for a balance between the rights of workers and the situation of enterprises. We're also looking at the development of the platform economy and trying to help employers to adapt to this new reality of platforms. Ladies and gentlemen, we are very much attached to health and safety in the workplace, and we provide all sorts of support and undertake all kinds of efforts in order to ensure that workplaces are safe and healthy. Our Chamber of Commerce and Industry also is attempting to improve the workplaces as the context in which workers work. And this is part of an overall policy. All of the subjects which are being dealt with on the agenda of this 113th session of the International Labour Conference are of great importance. The report of the Director General spoke of this exhaustively, and we need to do everything possible to take up the challenges that we have today. We believe that the development of healthy labor relations are absolutely the key to economic success and also increase in productivity. This needs to be based on mutual respect so that we can together take up the challenges, which are many and varied. We insist that our attachment to the principles and to the values of this organization are true. We are attached to social dialogue among the various constituents and partners. Thank you. I'd like to thank the delegate of the employers of the United Arab Emirates. And now call upon Mr. Dan Juvan of Slovenia.
Thank you, Director General, Mr. President, delegates, ladies and gentlemen. I'm honored to be here today to participate in this year's plenary discussion of the Director General report on reinforcing the connection between jobs, rights and growth. We thank the Office for the well-elaborated report and welcome the discussion, which I see as a continuation of the last year's renewed social contract. In the time of growing discontent, fueled by multiple crises, the debate is indeed pertinent. Crises such as geopolitical, climate, economic and social have directly affected the lives of people. As several persistent issues such as poverty, inequalities, informality, insecurities, lack of adequate social and labour protection and so on remain insufficiently addressed and people are left behind, trust in institutions and government fades. The findings of the DG report are clear. Worldwide, over the last few decades, we have allowed the weakening of the working class. We are letting wages and working conditions lag far behind labor productivity growth. We let people feel insecure and insufficiently equipped to face the difficulties brought by the transformation in the world of work driven by digitalization, technological progress and demographic shifts. It is and remains a political decision, not a natural course of events. If the trend is to be reversed and if we aim to ensure that economic growth results in improved social justice, we have to place jobs and rights at the center of economic and financial policies. In doing so, we must fully adhere to the basic principles of this organization enshrined in the Declaration of Philadelphia, including that labor is not a commodity. We need to recognize the full social value of decent work, which not only sustains us, but it gives us a sense of identity, belonging and purpose, and forge social cohesion, to quote the Global Commission on the Future of Work. At the national level, we continue to strengthen our efforts to facilitate a positive nexus between jobs, rights and growth. The measures are formulated in consultation with social partners and through broader political debate. Let me list some of them. Slovenian statutory minimum wage corresponds to the ILO concept of a minimum living wage. As of 2021, the amount of the minimum wage is determined in the range between 120 and 140% of the minimum cost of living. A new formula linked to the minimum cost of living established more equal and fair treatment of all workers, especially those with lower incomes. With recent amendments to the Employment Relationship Act, we further enhanced labor protection. The right to disconnect was enacted. Legal protections for workers' representatives against unlawful dismissals was strengthened. Working conditions were also improved by promoting more transparent and predictable employment, which to a greater extent enables the reconciliation of professional and private life. Victims of domestic violence have been granted the right to paid absence from work up to 5 days. In addition, pension reform was recently agreed upon with social partners, which reinforces the solidarity elements of the pension system as well as its stability in light of demographic changes. In the context of increased labor migration, we are intensifying our efforts towards better protection of migrant workers, who are particularly vulnerable to violation of their rights, unequal treatment, exploitation and abuse, also due to lack of appropriate and understandable information. To provide comprehensive support to migrant workers, Info Point for Foreigners was set up by the Slovenian Employment Service. An additional security measure is also the newly established public register of employers who have been punished for labor law offences. With the framework of the elimination of precarious work, which remains our top priority, measures to prevent abuses in the field of agency work are being considered. Director General, President. Let me emphasize that we are convinced of the ILO's central role in pursuing a positive nexus between economic efficiency, social justice and individual liberty. With its normative mandate, tripartite structure and social dialogue at its heart, the ILO remains rightly positioned to advance social justice worldwide. In this respect, we welcome the ILO's consensual tripartite contribution to the Second World Summit for Social Development. The political declaration to be adopted within the upcoming summit this year, if set ambitiously, boosts our joint endeavours towards social progress. In a world where falling empires would rather finance genocide than social progress and global justice, I wish you courage and the best of luck. Thank you.
Agradecemos, representante.
Thank you. We thank the government of Slovenia and call on Mr. Hasun Amena of the workers of Ethiopia.
President, distinguished delegates, please allow me to join previous speakers to congratulate you for being elected as the chairperson of this year's International Labour Conference. It is a great honor and a privilege to deliver a speech at this annual International Labour Conference on behalf of Ethiopian trade unions and that of myself. Mr. President, I would like to congratulate Mr. Gilbert Howingo, Director General of the ILO, for his leadership and for guiding the organization through complex global challenges in the world of work. His reports over the past years have been relevant, clearly outlined the pressing issues facing the labor sector and offering meaningful solutions. This year's speech in particular reaffirmed that achieving social justice requires a strong link between jobs, rights, and growth anchored in democratic values and institutions that ensure accountability, fairness, and inclusive participation. In this connection, I also want to commend that the agendas set forth for this conference are pertinent and properly reflect the existing crucial issues and the daunting challenges facing global labor market governance. Mr. President, like workers in many countries, Ethiopian workers face numerous challenges and uncertainties. Thus are driven by rapid changing labor markets shaped by globalization, technological advancement, imbalance in global value chain, climate change, demographic shifts, escalating geopolitical tensions, and internal by rising cost of living and ongoing conflicts. To address the root cause of internal conflict and the historical challenge, Ethiopia has initiated a national dialogue process. This dialogue includes representatives from major political parties and the civil society organizations and aims to develop inclusive agendas for reconciliation, peace, stability, and sustainable development. Confederation of Ethiopian Trade Unions and its members have been playing an active and a constructive role in this process, committed to contributing positively to national unity and lasting peace. In response to the growing economic pressure on workers, Confederation of Ethiopian Trade Unions is advocating for the urgent establishment of a minimum wage board to set fair and balanced wage levels. We are also calling for reductions in income tax rates to achieve tax justice for Ethiopian workers and their families. Encouragingly, the government has responded positively, and the discussion on the regulation to establish a minimum wage board have begun. Additionally, Confederation of Ethiopian Trade Union is actively working to organize unorganized workers and promote social dialogue to strengthen tripartite and bipartite cooperation. This includes ongoing efforts to improve consultation, negotiation, and information sharing between social partners. Finally, I would like to reaffirm Confederation of Ethiopian Trade Unions' unwavering commitment to strengthening the link between jobs, rights, and economic growth through the promotion of democratic values and institutions, as emphasized throughout this conference. We pledge to continue advocating for the ratification and implementation of International Labour Organization conventions and to actively contribute to achieving decent work and social justice in the world of work. Decent job and social justice for all. I thank you for your attention. God bless you all.
Thank you, the Workers' Delegate of Ethiopia, and we invite Mercy Dinya, Deputy Minister of Public Service, Labour and Welfare of Zimbabwe.
The President of the Conference, thank you for giving Zimbabwe a chance to contribute to the discussions, to the Director General and Chairperson of the Governing Body's reports. which touch on a number of critical elements towards social justice, solidarity, and sustainable development. The Director General's report on reinforcing the connection of jobs, rights, and growth echoes the very sentiments of the current global world and, according to the World Bank, the most reliable pathway of getting out of poverty. The world should therefore leverage on the unique characteristics, resources to foster jobs, economic growth and development. The Director General's report underscores the critical link between economic growth and labor rights, which, in our considered view, culminates into inclusive economic growth. The ILO Fundamental Conventions therefore become increasingly relevant as the world evolves. Consequently, the Office should continue to work with Member States, social partners, and other stakeholders to advance universal ratification and implementation of its fundamental conventions. As rightly reported by the Director General, we also need to build and strengthen global partnerships that make a difference and ensure that those partnerships that exist, including the global, South-South, regional, and country levels, carry these responsibilities collectively. The report highlights innovative approaches to addressing informality and promoting transitions to formal employment, recognizing that informal employment remains one of the dominant features of the labor market. It is important to work as a collective and share information and best practices on how to address the several challenges that can hinder the transition to formality. There is no doubt there is need for targeted policy interventions and reforms to establish clear, coherent, and enforceable policies, laws and regulations to ensure that workers' enjoy rights and protections, as well as create an enabling environment for sustainable enterprises. Distinguished delegates, let me assure you that Zimbabwe aligns with the same shared common vision and is taking significant strides in reinforcing efforts towards interconnecting jobs, rights, and growth. Zimbabwe has amended the Labour Act, which has integrated the provisions of the International Labour Standards, including the ILO Convention 190 on violence and harassment in the workplace. A formalization strategy and the employment policy has also been developed, and the two documents are currently before Cabinet for consideration. Mr. President, with respect to the report of the Chairperson of the governing body, my delegation has taken note of the comprehensive work that has been done, including the continued discussion on the democratization of the ILO governance structures and improving the functioning of the governing body. Zimbabwe welcomes the continued dialogue, and we wish to call upon ILO member states who have not yet ratified the 1986 instrument of amendment of the ILO Constitution to consider doing so. In particular, ratification of the instrument by the countries of chief industrial importance would go a long way in promoting democracy, which is needed to build win-win outcomes in the work of the ILO. Mr. President, with respect to the annex of the DG's report on the situation of workers in the occupied Arab territories, my delegation offers its solidarity to the affected workers and their families, and we remain hopeful that the situation will improve in the near future. In conclusion, as we navigate global economic uncertainties and dynamics, tripartite Dialogue remains essential as a cornerstone of humanity, aspired global solidarity, and social justice. Zimbabwe joins other speakers to reaffirm our commitment to ILO principles and call for enhanced international cooperation to build resilient labor markets and inclusive socio-economic growth, leaving no one and no place behind. I thank you.
Agradecemos.
We'd like to thank the representative of Zimbabwe for that speech and now call upon Gerardo Martinez, worker delegate of Argentina.
Señor Presidente.
Mr. President, distinguished delegates, we find that poverty and inequality are increasing. Political tensions are leading to aggression and attacks on democracy and democratic values. Economy and technology needs to be used for the service of human beings for a just transition. Artificial intelligence cannot lead us towards artificial social justice. We need, within the world of work, to have a creative world which increases the benefit to humanity. With a global coalition for social justice, for the workers of the world, social justice is an objective which needs to be defended alongside the protection of human life and justice. We are seeing increases in informality, in unemployment, and in poverty, and this undermines the democracy in our region. We see increase in assassinations and imprisonments against individuals and organizations. We are calling for the freedom of association and the decriminalization of workers' activities. The right to strike are concrete historical achievements in Argentina. The message of the politics continues to be one of confrontation, and there are very strong demands in terms of education, health, economy. We don't see enough jobs created. More people are falling into extreme poverty, and this is affecting the values of social justice. Without the state, there is no nation. Talking about a modern state where we promote strategies which take all human beings into account so that we can achieve the Argentina of our dreams. It's unacceptable that about half of the Argentinian population is suffering from poverty and indigency in a country with such huge economic potential. Argentina has more than 40% informality. We want to be part of the solution. We, representing the formal and informal workers, we want to be heard. We know that what we need to do to have a pact between production and employment. Production and employment need to be looked at together in the same way as fiscal and economic policies. Our history shows us examples of social progress and mobility through social dialogue. It's unacceptable that labor rights which have been achieved should be reneged upon. We need to have a table of negotiation where the voice of the workers are respected, because we're putting forward solid arguments to resolve the problems of the society through wages, through formality, through rights, through dignity. We're not defining the policies, but we unfortunately suffer the consequences of those policies. Public policy requires economic and social concerns to be be taken together along with social justice. The consensus of society for low inflation needs to be the efforts of joint work and not put on the back of the workers and the most vulnerable parts of society, even the middle classes. Violence against the human being for not being able to have a decent work or decent income, the imposition of a cap on negotiations. No, we need to rise up. And as we have stated in previous conferences, no political force can achieve results alone. We as the workers reconfirm our commitment to designing a fairer society, for an agenda and dialogue for an Argentina in which we have development of labor, of the economy, with equality of opportunity for all. Thank you very much to the workers' representative of Argentina. And I now give the floor to Mr. Vladislav Gutsanov, Minister of Labour and Social Policy, Bulgaria.
Mr. Vice President, Your Excellency, esteemed delegates, representative of workers, employers and governments. It is an honor for me to take part of this session of International Labour Conference. Your meeting is the crucial moment in history, the market but great challenge, but also the opportunity to refund our shared commitment to social justice, decent work and inclusive growth. Since its founding in 1919, the International Labour Organization has stood as the symbol of hope, built and the belief that in just working conditions trade global peace and stability. This principle remains just as relevant today. The Philadelphia Declaration reminds us that all policies, economics, financial and social, must aim to achieve social justice. Inequality remains a major issue both nationally and globally. The gap between the rich and the poor is widening, and this divide affects not just income but also access to healthcare, education and decent living conditions. These inequalities lead to injustice and the lack of the equal opportunities at life. Work is the best way to address these disparities. This is our shared responsibility, but to the national and the global level. The Global Coalition for the Social Justice is the important platform to promote these efforts by driving political commitment, investment and action that turn principality into real change. A new social contract must strengthen democratic government at all levels, reduce inequalities and put people's needs in the center of the policy making. Social partners must be including of this process. This year's reports of the Director General highlights to the fundamental truth. Jobs creation, protection of workers' rights and economic growth must go hand in hand. But this vision can only become reality if it is rooted in democratic values, in the extraction and the foster accountability, responsibility, and above all justice and inclusion through social dialogues. The world is facing rapid change, uncertainty and growing inequality. In the face of this challenge, we must recognize that economic growth alone is not enough. Growth must be inclusive, work must be decent, we need to invest in people. Bulgarians using both of the national budget and European funding to provide access to training and rescue. We have allocated over €500 million to help people maintain to update their skills and aligned with the lifelong learning approach. We pay special attention to closing and the skills gap between different and age groups, especially in the digital and STEM fields, and we support the creation of the new and green jobs. Our main focus is to ensure that training for the workforce is not only accessible but also effective. In Bulgaria, the employment rate continued to rise and has reached 77%, while employment has dropped to 4.2%. The key priorities of our active labour market policies are to promote employment among vulnerable groups and to increase both the quantity and quality of the available workforce. Again, our course focuses into delivering accessible and effective training. In conclusion, I would like to stress that this conference must send a clear message. Social justice is the foundation of peace, prosperity, and decent work. Let us move forward toward a future where social justice shapes our societies and economies. Thank you very much for attention.
We thank the government representative of Bulgaria, and we call now on Ms. Garcia, employer representative from Cuba. President, distinguished delegates, we think that it's a very opportune initiative that has been taken to address the links between employment rights and growth as the central focus of the Director General's report. We agree that the creation of decent jobs at a global level has not been sufficient and that there's been an increase in inequality, starting from stagnation in wages, an increase of the cost of living, and the weight of death, which continues to strangle developing economies, which has led to corresponding lack of trust in institutions, which directly affects social cohesion and social justice. Labour market statistics are horrifying. The gap between the real growth of productivity and real growth in wages has gone up by 14.2%. People who are guilty of the crime of forced labour are earning millions, and the rate of employment at a global level is at 5%. The number of young people who are not in work, training or education is at more than 20%. 1 of every 6 workers does not have adequately paid work. Nearly 3 million workers died as a result of occupational illnesses or accidents, most of them related to climate change. And by 2030, there'll be more people over 60 years old than children below 10 years old living in developing countries. Given this complicated situation, it's right that we recognise the role that sustainable enterprises have to play in the creation of new decent jobs, promoting efficient management of innovation in the environment to mitigate the effects of climate change. Technology has to provide for the creation of jobs, the protection of rights, the respect for human dignity, the increase of productivity, and an increase in trust and confidence. Mr. President, it's clear that if we want to maintain the legitimacy of the values and principles that the ILO defends, we need a new social contract which will give priority to governance institutions, reduce disequality, will place the needs and aspirations of individual people in the central of policy, and will provide for the participation of the social partners in the taking of decisions through tripartite social dialogue, which makes it possible successfully to address the challenges of technological development, demographic developments, and climate change. This new social contract has to seek greater social justice for all, so that the trinity of employment, growth, and rights has more dynamism and is more in line with a fair distribution of prosperity and in the construction of a more resilient future. Faced with all of this, through social dialogue in my country, we have gone for sustainable development, reconciling economic growth with ecological balance and the rights of individuals. Mr. President, the greatest obstacle that Cuba currently has to face in strengthening the link between employment, rights and growth can be found in the criminal, economic, commercial and financial blockade imposed over more than 60 years by the government of the United States and by our arbitrary inclusion in a spurious list of countries that supposedly sponsor terrorism. This policy is the main obstacle for the development of our economy and for the development of the Cuban business system. Given that social justice and the achievement of social justice is still a responsibility that is incumbent on all of us, the Cuban employers need bilateral cooperation, taking advantage of the ILO's hundreds of years of experience in the mobilization of political commitments, investments, and specific actions. Finally, we'd like to reaffirm our firm support for and solidarity with the noble people of Palestine. Thank you to the employer delegate of Cuba. I'd now like to call on Mr. Omar Sultanov, government representative of Kyrgyzstan.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Director General, distinguished delegates, on behalf of Kyrgyzstan, I would like to express sincere gratitude to ILO for its continued support and fruitful cooperation, as well as contribution to the promotion of decent work, social justice, human rights. Since becoming a full member of ILO in 1992, Kyrgyzstan has benefited from comprehensive assistance in advancing labor reforms and strengthening labor institutions to effectively address the challenges of the modern economy. To date, Kyrgyzstan has ratified 54 ILO conventions. Our upcoming priorities include the ratification of Convention 181 on private employment agencies, as well as 2 key conventions on occupational safety and health, 155 and 187. We view these steps as milestones in improving working conditions, protecting workers' rights, and deepening our integration into the global labor community. Kyrgyzstan remains committed to strengthening labor rights and ensuring decent working conditions. We highly value our cooperation with the ILO, which supports the implementation of national priorities in the field of labor and social protection. The Constitution of Kyrgyzstan guarantees all fundamental labor rights. A major achievement in this area was the entry into force of the new labor code in January 25. The new labor code reflects our country's commitment to international labor standards and is the result of broad agreement between all social partners. It balances the interests of workers and employers, strengthening mechanisms for protecting labor rights, preventing workplace discrimination, and digitalized labor documents, expand the rights of persons with disabilities, and develop social dialogue. Last year, Kyrgyzstan ratified ILO Convention 190 on the elimination of violence and harassment in the world of work. This was a huge step toward building an inclusive, safe, and respectful work environment. We recognize that effective implementation requires a comprehensive approach, from legal adaptation to the development of enforcement mechanisms, including education, prevention, and victim protection. We continue to actively cooperate with ILO in areas such as labor inspection, employment, promotion, occupational safety and health, and expanding opportunities for youth and women in the labor market. At the heart of all our efforts remains the worker, their rights, well-being, and development. Kyrgyzstan strongly supports global efforts to ensure social justice and decent work for all. We stand ready to actively contribute to ILO initiatives aimed at strengthening tripartism, sustainable development, and international solidarity. The President of Kyrgyzstan personally leads the fight against corruption and organized crime. Thanks to this policy and willpower, we've managed to increase our tax revenues 3 times and our customs revenues 4 times within the last 3 years, while economy grows 10% annually. All these extra revenues go to workers, increasing their and their families' well-being and health. Thank you.
Gracias.
Thank you, Mr. Masropson. I'm now going to give the floor to Mr. Yuri Senko, worker representative from Belarus.
Добрый день, уважаемые.
Good day, Mr. President, and respected participants in the conference. I'm speaking on behalf of the unions of the Republic of Belarus, which brings together millions of workers in our country. And first of all, I would like to underline that we fully join in the disappointment of the General Director of the ILO with the fact that each year the workers of the world are feeling greater uncertainty with regard to tomorrow and coming up against problems with achieving the basic needs of their family. Over the last decades, the unions of Belarus have been working in the ILO conference, and each year we hear from the high tribunes calls for social justice. We hear the commitments of the major countries with regard to honest policies for the greater welfare of all. But unfortunately, practice demonstrates that all of these are just loud statements. Every day the world is going further and further away from social justice and genuine democracy. The real concerns of the worker in a number of countries, including in those countries who think themselves the epitome of democracy, are undermined by and lead towards slogans and politicization and demagoguery. How can we explain otherwise the fact that in a number of states with great economies, the financial possibilities of millions of people don't even allow them to have education or medicine? They're deprived of basic housing and social guarantees. How to explain otherwise the fact that there are no guarantees of employment, and the usual practice in a number of countries is zero-hour contracts? The colossal problems at an international level. We've moved away from solidarity for general welfare, and the world has gone towards sanctions and protectionism, open political economic blackmails, diktat imposition of particular values. This has become the norm for many countries of the developed world. And all of this shows that we have, as a community, forgotten the lessons of history. We've forgotten the basis of the Philadelphia Declaration, that for a stable world, we need to have social justice, and the non-well-being of workers will sooner or later lead to generalized crisis. Unfortunately, we need today to acknowledge that the international institutions, including the International Labour Organization, are not doing what is necessary to oppose these trends. According to the ILO's constitution, we need to look at and evaluate national and international programs to ensure social justice. But from ILO, we have seen no sanctions or limitations increasing the income or the well-being of workers, despite the fact that there is hunger and starvation in a number of poor countries. Obviously, the same policies which have led to this poverty are being continued, leading to greater poverty. The Director General of the ILO is absolutely right when he said that countries are tired of such lack of honesty and lack of justice, of these positions. We need to ensure that we are working together for equality and for the well-being of all. We as a country and we as unions of Belarus fully support this, and that's why we are working actively to strengthen our partnerships with the Shanghai Cooperation Organization. We are learning how to support one another in the workplace through strengthening dialogue and the interest of human beings, colleagues. Belarus today can be proud of the fact that we have achieved all of those aims which the ILO is calling on the world to try to achieve in the areas of social guarantees, education, medicine. We have achieved all of it without exclusion. Enormous efforts are made in supporting mothers and children. We have achieved productive and effective employment for all. And we have the lowest unemployment levels in the world. All of these achievements are based on a solid social dialogue and honest political policy in the international arena. We call upon all countries and all unions to work to sing off the same song sheet as us and to work to oppose dishonest political games in order for our peoples to have a sustainable and prosperous future. Once again, Mr. President, I'd like to say a few words with regard to the workers of the International Labour Organization. We come here to Geneva to work with the International Labour Organization, expecting that our voice, our experience will be listened to. Yesterday, at one of the items on the agenda was Belarus, and as a representative of 4 million workers of Belarus, I, of course, requested the floor. I did not get the floor. How is it possible that at the International Labour Organization such a thing should happen? We believe that the principles of the work of the International Labour Organization need to be followed within the conference with regard to justice and the access to the floor. Thank you.
I'd like to thank the representative of the workers of Belarus. We now call Mr. Guido Domenici Ricci to speak, employer delegate from Guatemala. Thank you, President. I welcome the Director General's report, which allows us to address matters which are of great interest to us. For reasons of time, I will only address 3 points. Firstly, on new technologies. We understand that these technologies represent a challenge, but above all, they're an opportunity for economies in development, and among those economies for small and medium-sized enterprises. As long as access to the technologies is facilitated and there's training given in their use, we have to avoid the gap with more developed economies growing. And within our country, we need to avoid a growth in the gap between large and small enterprises, with the risk that the small enterprises move into the sector, in the informal sector, which in cases like that of my country can reach a rate of up to 70% of enterprises. We need a virtuous circle so that as many enterprises as possible can be incorporated into the formal sector of the economy with the access to the tools which are available to us these days. This is a very great challenge in countries such as mine, where we have not been in a position to complete the 3rd industrial revolution, while now people are talking even about a 5th industrial revolution. Given all of this, there's an effort that has to be made and shared by government, workers and employers, which will provide a modern employment policy to the country and which will address as an essential objective, the creation of the necessary conditions for the development of more sustainable enterprises. with adequate regulatory framework, favourable to investment, physical and legal security, infrastructure and training of workers. In the situation of my country, where we need to address the situation right from secondary education so that we can take advantage of our demographic bonus. We also need to foment entrepreneurial spirit among our young people. On the other hand, we also need to look at the phenomenon of migration, trying to keep talent in our country. This also should be a central focus of the policy I was talking about before, but also we need to consider how to get people who are coming back to the country back into the labour market and to create the conditions that will make it possible for them to do business with success. And there's a particularly important job to be done in all of this by vocational training institutions, which an ideal ambit for social dialogue to reach specific results, because workers and employers work together with the same objective, with shared financing. The third aspect has to do with social dialogue and democratic resilience. There's no question of the need to respect and strengthen the spaces for social dialogue and to promote a discussion within social dialogue